Far too many.
Let's call the meeting to order.
Is this a refillable?
Okay.
Should I?
Please, we're rolling, I've been told, so let's call the meeting to order at 7:02 p.m.
Okay. There you are.
Can we have a roll call, please, Garrett?
Yes, Reardon.
Here,
Paul Sagan.
Here.
Kennedy here. Egan. On the
on the
phone.
phone.
Okay. Bergen.
Here.
Trabilovich.
Here.
Time.
Here.
Lamb.
Here.
Rapisan.
Here.
Joe? Can you tell us why you cannot attend in person?
I'm out of town on mission.
Are you in a hot tub? No, sorry.
Can we have a motion to allow Mr. Egan to attend by phone?
I'll second.
Can you call the roll on that vote, please?
Yes. Paul Sagan.
Yes.
Kennedy, yes. Egan can't vote yet. Bergen.
Yes.
Trabilovich.
Yes.
Time.
Yes.
Lamb.
Yes.
Rapisan.
Here. Yes.
And Reardon.
Yes.
Passes 8-0.
Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Can we have a motion on that?
Move that we approve the consent agenda as listed items of action.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Discussion from our big audience back there? No. Can you call the roll, or call the vote on that?
Yes. Kennedy, yes. Egan. Joe.
Joe, consent agenda?
Yes.
Berkham.
Yes.
Trabilovich.
Yes.
Time.
Yes.
Lamb.
Yes.
Rapisan.
Yes.
Reardon.
Yes.
Paul Sagan.
Yes.
9-0.
Any comments from the general public on non-agenda items? None being said, moving on to the secretary's report.
Okay, we got some communications this month. Susan Monroe said she really appreciates the circulation department for their friendliness throughout the renovation. And she appreciates, well, we appreciated her, and that was from Laura saying back to her that basically we appreciated the patrons' flexibility during the renovation as well. Somebody, Susan Schaefer, responded to the email blast that went out that we're so close in the renovation, saying that that the library staff have done a wonderful job of managing a huge project. The library's a Parker's jewel, and congrats to all the library staff. We apparently were the #1 story in the U.S. speed skating newsletter that's emailed to all members of the organization nationwide for the display that was put on the second floor. I'll pass this around.
It was a great display. It really was.
It was a good display.
It really was interesting.
I was surprised to read it, but I am in the speed skating club.
Oh, yeah.
So I was surprised to read that we were the lead story.
I don't want to say we're surprised you're the speed skating.
We always
Well,
think
what I
we know
do-
you, and then there's one new fact that we never
What I
guessed.
do is not speedy and it's barely skating. So it really needs another name, but I do hang with the club and skate with you.
The city colleges of Chicago, from Malcolm X College, their librarian wrote to thank us for the bookends that we must have donated when we were
Yes.
removing things and recycling things.
Yes.
Okay. And then there's another news article for our planned celebration. I'm imagining this is from the, oh yeah, it's from the Haldar Advocate.
Yes.
That's it. In terms of our conversation this afternoon, do you want me to pick that up in kind of at the unfinished business?
I wanted to make one comment about
Yeah,
the
that'd be good.
correspondence, if you could.
Yeah.
There was also an article in, I think it was the Herald, when the libraries was open during the very cold days, when a lot of libraries around us. And I wanted to express my sense of pride and gratitude to the staff for making the personal sacrifice to be out. And there for our patrons who might not have had a convenient place to be. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Well done for staff. Out of curiosity, which of these cameras is working?
If I can add one thing to that?
Sure. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I had a friend who didn't go to work that day because of the cold weather, and his internet went down, and he managed to get to the library and was able to use the internet there, and was appreciative of the fact that the library was open, and he was able to conduct his, get on the internet and do business when he wouldn't have otherwise. He wasn't making any money there, though.
Thank you for that, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Oh.
Anything else on the secretary's report?
No, that's it.
Joe, we're on item
Can't
6E
for the cameras.
on page 43 of the packet. Do you have any comments on the year-to-date budget report?
Yeah, I have one comment. If we go to PDF 45, which I think is around page 43.
Okay.
And it relates to the comment later on, but we're at 75% of the year, and our operating budget, we spent 63. With the biggest underspend on the first line, salaries, we're about $300,000 below our budget of $2.436 million. So we're underspending. I'm not exactly sure why that is. I'm not complaining, but when we get later on to our budget for next year, we budgeted $2.40 million. And I'm not sure why we would, if we're underspending by, at this point, $300,000, why we wouldn't drop our budget for salaries for next year. Maybe Heidi can comment on that.
Do you want to talk about that now or when we get to the budget discussion?
Well, I guess that's a teaser for when we get to the budget discussion. You're probably right. We probably should wait till we get to the budget discussion. But the rest of it, looks in line with where we are year to date, and everything for the most part is on budget. A little under or a little over. Overall, we're under. Our heat is over. That's explainable, and that will probably continue to increase over our budget because of the cold winter. But it's small dollars in the overall scheme of things. Those are my only comments.
Any questions for Joe? Do we have a motion to approve that?
Oh, I had a question just generally on the technology fund. I wanted to ask, maybe Heidi, you can just, what are we paying Chase for on the technology fund?
What page is that on?
Page 39. We have 3 expenditures on the technology fund this month. One for Biblioteca, which is the return machines, the scanners or whatever they are, I assume. Then we have CVI, which honestly I'm not sure what that is because I thought we were paying them out of the data processing budget line. And then we have Chase, which is I found very strange.
Chase just means we paid it on the library credit card.
Oh.
I
Okay.
don't know what the 1,300 is,
Yeah, okay.
but that's the vendor we paid it to.
Okay.
I mean, I could put the actual vendor, if that would be more helpful.
And what's
It
for
probably would
CVI?
be.
What are we paying under the technology replacement fund? Or in the technology fund? Because I know we're paying them for, there's the data processing line,
That's the maintenance contract.
yes?
This is the
What's the other one?
hardware.
This is new hardware.
The new computer?
Oh, so we
computers.
paid for part of that already.
Yes,
Okay.
at our last meeting, the board authorized us to
Right.
go ahead and they requested a 50%
Down payment.
Okay,
We thought that was reasonable.
thank you.
Did they give you a due date on this? Because there was a concern that they might be months away.
Yeah.
We don't have a due date yet.
Out of curiosity, Angela, is the 1/31/2019 CHAE just a misspelling?
It is.
Chase.
Missing an S?
It's already penciled in here. Yes, it is.
Okay, so did we get a motion to approve this?
Nobody
No.
proposed yet. I'll propose. Motion to approve the treasurer report.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Can you call the vote, please?
Yes, Egan,
Yes.
Berkham,
Yes.
Turbilovich,
Yes.
Kime,
Yes.
Lamb,
Yes.
Rappaport,
Yes.
Reardon,
Yes.
Paul Segman,
Yes.
Kennedy, yes, passes 9-0.
Library Director's report.
Thank you so much. Carl Giametti from Studio GC is joining us here this evening, and specifically for the renovation update part of my report. So I'll just really quickly give you a brief summary, and then we can ask Carl to add anything that I omitted, and be happy to take any questions you might have. If you turn to page 57 of the packet, I have a short summary that on February 8th, we opened the Prospect entrance and the surrounding areas, as well as the children's services. That was fantastic, and we have had nothing but, well, that's not true, not nothing but, we've had lots and lots of positive comments. And about how spacious things are, how bright things are, how nice it is to have a nice new, library to be proud of, and we've really appreciated hearing that. The first floor bathroom, the two first floor bathrooms have all of their tile fixtures and partitions in place. We're looking at opening those to the public by the end of this week. Is that correct, Carl?
Yes.
For the fireplace and second floor offices, we are looking at March 1st for the fireplaces and February, fireplace, excuse me. Well, actually, there are two, it's double-sided.
One on each side.
And February 27th for the offices there on the second floor. So some additional time was required to complete those. Additional bathroom tile work on the second floor, redoing the tile that was completed, is slated to begin next Wednesday, the 27th. It was estimated to take approximately 2 weeks. So I would imagine we could reopen those to the public March 15th. Carl, is there anything you would add?
Last week we had talked about some low voltage work that needs to be completed. That was completed. There are some minor things like labeling, wiring, and stuff that needs to be completed, but I know Heidi mentioned that specifically last week, and that has been completed. Let's see. We are anticipating, so on Thursday, myself and the rest of the engineering team will be out here to do a complete punch list of the entire project. We anticipate issuing a certificate of substantial completion the following week once the fireplace is completed. It was Heidi's request that the certificate not be issued until that work was completed. So at that time, we will go ahead and issue that certificate with the punch list attached and begin moving towards final completion. The last thing that I think just needs to be mentioned, Heidi, were you going to talk about the meeting for this Friday?
Oh, go right ahead, Carl.
Yeah, okay. So at the last meeting, there was a discussion of kind of having a cost resolution meeting where there would be 2 board members present, taking into account everyone's availability and the speed that CSI could get Heidi's list of credits priced and over to the library. We would like to schedule that Friday afternoon. Trying to get everyone's schedule to work appropriately. We're kind of looking at a 3:30, 4 o'clock start time. I know it's later in the day on Friday, which no one likes, but I think everyone has an interest in trying to get this resolved as soon as possible. So I will be there, Rick McCarthy will be there, representatives from CSI will be there, and then I bet Heidi, you will coordinate the 2 board members that will attend that meeting.
Yes, and I heard back that time doesn't work for our two frontline.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm gonna be at a client meeting in Ohio on Friday, so I will not be able to attend.
I can attend earlier in the afternoon, I can't attend later though.
So we thought maybe 2 o'clock if it's possible.
Okay,
Cheat it earlier.
Yeah, I will talk to everyone involved and get back. Why don't we go ahead and set up an alternate early the following week if we can? I don't know if that'll work for CSI, because I believe Pete said he had some
The
availability.
next 2 weeks.
Okay,
Not be available.
Try and make it on this Friday if you can,
okay,
you know, move it along. And then that will also give us time for further discussion if needed.
okay. And also there was talk about doing a walkthrough with kind of the various credits and ads. So I can be here before that meeting, so if the 2 board members would like to meet me and presumably Heidi earlier, we can walk through, so that way all that information is kind of observed before the meeting. So once we kind of organize that time, we can set up a time to meet a little bit earlier and do the walkthrough.
See, I can be early. Well, no, I can't.
We're gonna be in Ohio then.
Yeah, you know, driving to Ohio in the morning. I could be here at like 9. My meeting in Ohio is at, I think it's 3 o'clock. So my game plan is to get on the road early.
I can also check my schedule and I could try to be here on Friday as well. I could see what I can
I
do.
can make
I can do it in the
myself
morning.
available,
I can do it in the morning, yeah.
and I can be available whenever you need.
I just am not available after like 3 o'clock.
Yeah, I may. be
Unfortunately, I'm not available in the morning. That's
2
right, I
o'clock
have an
kind of-
immovable
2
meeting.
o'clock works.
Feels
for
like our
Steve.
best bet if
Right, yeah,
that
2
can
o'clock,
work.
yeah.
Yeah,
That works for
about
me,
the
I will
latest
check
I
for
can go.
CSI and Rick and,
Joe,
That's
are
the
you in
latest I
town
can
on
go.
Friday?
This Friday, no.
Okay.
so I'll reach out to CSI and Rick McCarthy. Heidi, I'll let you coordinate what board members will be there, but we're gonna, we reviewed the list of credits, and CSI thinks that they will have all that information to us by Thursday, you know, or Friday at the latest.
Carl, I have a question.
Sure.
Once you get the punch list prepared, how long will CSI have to prepare to fix everything on the punch list?
It's a little bit difficult to say without having completed the punch list inspection.
It depends on
It
what needs to
depends.
be
I mean,
done.
there are some outstanding items, for example, the door into the main stairway that has a 2-month lead time. So certainly it won't be final completion until that door is in.
Okay.
But, you know, they want to get their money as quickly as you want to be completed with the project. So, I mean, we'll continue to have weekly meetings and push them to complete all these items.
And our retainer is what, 10%?
10% retainage at the end, correct?
Yeah.
So we can expect a pay application from CSI probably next week.
Right, they would like to submit it regardless of the outcome of Friday for the work performed to date and work approved. So I think, you know, once a month, it's expected that they will submit a pay app.
Right, right. So I just want to recognize that, and obviously the 10% retainage would still be there.
Right.
The negotiation and discussion about these change orders would still be there. So when I get that pay request, their monthly pay request, I would approve that to pay them for the work done on this schedule unless there's any,
How much is the actual retainage?
Dollar amount wise?
Yeah, 200,000.
No, it'll be here, if I recall what the contract sum is at this point.
10%.
Sorry, give me 1 second here. Be like 140,000.
And then you're looking for credit of approximately 70.
the credit.
Yeah.
I don't think.
We're waiting to see what those credits are. Some of that stuff is.
Yeah, there's some,
not
there are
big.
already some on the list.
Yeah, but it seems to me like the stuff that's left,
Pretty small.
yeah, it's generally, I mean, might be what, $7,000-8,000 max? I
I
don't
don't
know.
have a good estimate.
Yeah.
I
I think your range is probably closer than.
Yeah, no, I mean, it doesn't look like it's big
Right.
stuff. that's
Yeah, I mean,
left on
one of the credits there I know is just a few $100s.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, that's,
And I feel like the balance that we need to strike is, you know, to make sure that they are compelled, you know, feel compelled to do the work, but also that we acknowledge the work that's been done, so that they can pay their subs, so the subs will come back and do the additional work that still needs to be done on the project. So when we were talking earlier today, I felt like that was a concern that we should address, that I don't want the board to be surprised if I approve this while we're holding other things. Carl, did you have a recommendation for us?
I mean, I believe, with not having the project manual and the contract in front of me, but I believe the contractor is authorized once a month to submit work, the pay application for work completed. It will certainly not bill on any work that has not, any items that are still up for discussion and, or has not been explicitly approved by the board. So, I mean, I think the board should expect that, and because there is not another board meeting before the end of the month, I don't see any way that this next pay application, even if everything is resolved on Friday, this next pay application will still not have all those items until the board actually votes and approves.
Do you have a report as to how much they have paid their subs?
We do. We get trailing payroll and lien waivers with every application, so yes, we every pay application we know that.
Okay, and if you could just provide Heidi with, call it, an overview of that. I would think that the subs have been paid all along.
Yep.
And they're not owed any more than, call it, the withholding percentage.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. If you look on the G702, the continuation sheet on the back of the pay app,
Yes.
that has every single sub listed, what they've been paid, and then the waivers where they certify that they've been paid that amount and releasing their lien rights on that portion.
Yes,
of work.
so we have all of that documentation.
Yeah, does that spreadsheet say what their total contract is also?
Yep.
So you can extrapolate from there.
Just want to make sure
So
there weren't
just
any
let's be
surprises.
clear.
I don't see any problem with
She
that.
should pay the bill.
140 grand is enough to get them to come back and finish, I would think.
Yeah, I would think.
Great.
I hope so.
Okay. And then Carl and I did receive information from CSI as to why the delay on the fireplace and the offices on the second floor. With the offices, we encountered some unforeseen conditions. There was some conduit. You want to describe it, Carl?
Are you talking about the buried conduits in the dumbwaiter shaft?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a bundle of 6, 8 conduits that were buried inside the dumbwaiter shaft that when we tore open the shaft, like, well, there they are right there, and so we had to devise a solution that required some time to go back and forth.
They were a conduit for what? Electric?
So there's an electrical panel on that floor, and there were some what I would call unorthodox wiring practices used in the original construction, where there was a lighting time clock right next to it that, for example, was, okay, well, it's right next to the panel. It was reasonable to assume that it was actually being controlled by that panel. Well, no, they disconnected it, and then there was a lighting issue with the library, and we found out the time clock was actually wired to the panel below. So there was kind of some juggling and trying to reverse engineer what was actually completed. So we could position electrical work in the wall, but yeah, the framing solution has been discussed and agreed upon, so now they're framing and moving out and moving forward with that work, and I think they said middle of next week as well.
Yes.
For completing that space.
Yes, and the change order that we had on the electrical and the framing in that space was about $2,700. So we took some time to negotiate it down. It's $1,500 now, and so I think that unforeseen condition and then taking the time to negotiate the CO is what caused the roughly 1 week delay for that space. And then for the fireplace, it was they're waiting for the delivery of the actual 2 fireplaces that will go back to back. So that was slated for last week, but now it will be next week. So I wanted to make sure you knew where the delays came from. And
in the children's department, some of the ornamental lights are in above the desk and above the story time area, and the remaining ones in the lobby will be installed, I believe, by the end of this week.
I ran into former President Bob Trisna, who was very impressed with the completion, children's, and the work that was done. Just wanted to give Bob some credit. So,
He was one of the first folks on Friday.
Yeah, I ran into him here. He says, "I'm happy and I'm never happy."
That's true.
Sounds like
So
Bob.
are we done with the inside?
The inside?
The construction inside, because I want to ask about the columns.
Oh,
Sure,
sure.
yeah.
Are we done with the columns?
We are not, and so the work outstanding on the columns, because winter, there was a delay from the column manufacturer, and I believe the exact reason was given, was that hunting season began in Montana, and that's where these columns are manufactured. So there is some delay in getting the columns, but they are installed now. The sealant was done just to make it watertight. However, given the temperatures that dropped, we did not want them doing painting outside the manufacturer's recommendation. So that work will be held open until April. We did, what's that? Right, yeah, exactly. Hopefully we don't run into, any more outdoor sporting seasons there. But we did discuss the possibility, and Heidi, I think, agreed with my suggestion that because really 98% of the work is done, as it's common practice, to reduce the retainage down to 5%, that really allows the GC to close out a lot of their subcontracts. Because, for example, the carpenter has no more work left. The punch list was done and completed. Heidi received a copy of our punch list. The main issue that we're addressing now is just the way the sealant joints interact with the column edges. Some are more visible than we were anticipating. And so that's something that when the weather gets warmer and they can get the painter out here and do some finish work, that'll be addressed. But yeah, right now that work is kind of just in a holding pattern until the weather cooperates.
And when you say the sealant joints, you're talking about both the vertical and the
Vertical and horizontal, yeah. Especially the horizontal. I think the horizontals are the worst offenders. There are portions of vertical joints that I think are really acceptable, considering it hasn't been painted yet. So you really do have a color difference between the column and the sealant, and all that will be painted. I think a lot of the vertical joints will get close to disappearing, or at least will be something that, unless you look for it, you won't see it. But the horizontal joints definitely need some work.
Okay, but one of the reasons I'm asking a lot about this is Angela just had me sign the last bill, or not the last bill, the second to last bill.
Right.
And she said 5% retainage. Is there enough there to get the rest of the work done if this contractor decides never to come back?
In my opinion, there is.
Okay.
We're really looking at a few days of, a painter out there. It's certainly for a project of that size and for a contractor of the size of KM Holly, they need that money. It's a small project. There's not huge margins. That really represents the only money he's going to make probably on that project. So he certainly calls me once a week just to check in, just so we're always talking. But yeah, I don't anticipate.
Is he gonna be able to paint that without one of those lifts?
He'll probably bring the lift out here.
So, that seems like that would be pretty, if say they did walk away, that would be a substantial cost to have a lift pull it out and hire a painter, so it's a little bit more than just hiring a painter, right?
Well, he probably pays a few $100 a day to rent a lift.
Yeah, the lifts aren't that expensive.
Yeah, I mean, they're,
No.
I think we talked about the other day that it was gonna cost a lot of money just to look into the before we went into the
I
college.
mean, I don't know what 5% is. What's 5%?
About 8,000, I think, right?
How
Wasn't
much?
it 8,000? Wasn't it?
Yeah,
It
wasn't
was
the contract
160?
about 150, yeah.
Yeah, 150, 160. It's about 8,000.
Yeah.
So when this was suggested and Carl said he felt that it was a typical practice, I did speak with a colleague of mine who said that yes, for smaller projects like this, especially ones that are so visible, like for a smaller contractor, this is gonna be the kind of project where drive by the Park Ridge Library, I did those columns. That for $8,000 for a small shop like that, it's a big, that's not a small sum. So we went ahead and did that. What Carl mentioned about the joints, that is of great concern to me, that they make those joints, what phrase did we use, Carl? Nearly invisible?
Visually indistinguishable.
Visually indistinguishable. So there,
Substantially.
Right.
there does need to be some work done there as well as the paint. It was suggested that maybe we consider a different finish of paint to help it be more forgiving. But they're gonna do a sample for us, a small sample.
Right.
We would rather them address the nearly indistinguishable mark, hit that mark before we try to fix it with paint.
Right, knowing that this is the front main entrance and is seen by every person that visited, we wrote into these project specifications that they need to a mock-up of one of the columns. So that way, it's not like they paint all 8, and then we need to fight over, oh, no, it's not what we were expecting. They are gonna be doing, either one column or one portion of the column for Heidi, John, myself to review and say, okay, this is acceptable, this isn't acceptable, we need to revise our practices. So they will be doing that, but again, we're weather limited. But until then, I think that, they match the profile really, really well. I think they turn out nice, we just gotta finish the joints, and I think that should be all set.
Thank you.
And I want to be respectful of Carl's time, if there aren't any other
I
questions.
have one
for him.
more. The conduit and the dumbwaiter reminded me that we're very anxious to make sure we have as-built drawings. Is that your responsibility or CSI's?
That is CSI's.
Okay,
However, something like that, because it's an existing condition, would likely not appear on an as-built drawing. They are responsible for marking up the.
Right, I get
Okay.
that, but I just don't want to lose, in the great rapture of completion, I don't want to lose that deliverable.
No, absolutely.
Let's make sure that is on Pete's list, to make sure we get those before we write the last check.
Certainly.
Yeah, good detail. Good detail.
Anything else for Carl? Thank you, Carl. You're welcome to stay and listen to us for the next couple hours.
Sorry, I think I need to go relieve my friend who I wasn't able to get a babysitter tonight, so he is anxiously waiting for my return. My wife is also at a work function, so.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you,
Thank
Carl.
you.
I almost expect a beer. So. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Continuing with the report, the new return stations are up and running. We've had, little things that we've learned along the way and realignments that have been made with the settings. I feel like it's really serving us well so far. We did have the wrong shipment from Biblioteca for the self-checks twice in January. Anastasia Brakmache, our circulation manager, did a great job letting them know how disappointed we were and teeing that up for me to hit it home. They have now provided an estimated delivery date between April 2nd and April 16th for the 5th and final unit. Anastasia and her team have come up with a plan so that we don't lose time, that we would install one of the 4 tower kiosk checkout stations in the lobby and make sure that we are able to beta test the new checkout equipment with the public from our desk, from our service desk. So she's got a rollout plan that she's gonna go ahead and she's already putting into action. Staff are training right now on one of the checkout stations in their workroom, and she anticipates bringing that out to the lobby March 1st. So thank you for making good with a bad situation. Any questions for me about 3M or Biblioteca or that equipment?
Just out of curiosity, because I actually haven't used one of the checkout stations. Now you're talking about, are they like the check-in station, which I'm so impressed with, where you basically bring your book, you scan it through something, it rolls through, or is it just a wave, or is it just carrying it out and it automatically?
Well, it's a very large kiosk with a very inviting screen. It has some cool LED lights It has a glass shelf where you can lay a pile of your checkouts and it will scan them all and check them out to you.
Okay.
Wow. So it's different than the one that was down there before, where you kind of had
Right.
to play with the barcode and you had,
Mhm.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So all our materials have been tagged with RFID technology, so that's what makes it work.
Is that sucker set up and working now?
In
The
the
new one?
circulation workroom, yep,
Could we see it after this meeting?
sure.
I'd like to do that if that's okay.
How many books can I handle at once?
Field
So
trip
far
also.
we've tested 8.
8.
Mhm.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it's cool.
Thank you. Are you happy with the book sorter?
Mhm.
And it's accurate and efficient and all those things?
It is, we're running into a couple issues, but the good thing is they go into the exception bin, so we're able to troubleshoot and problem solve. But I think as time goes on, we'll get it all sorted out.
Excellent, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Nice job.
Staff happy with the device?
Yeah, they're all very excited.
Yeah, we all, had a little bit of trepidation, not sure what to expect. And I walked into the workroom the other day and, one of the crew was practicing on the checkout station, and was talking with another staff member who was sitting at the desk, working on a project about how cool it was. So that was very heartening to see. Okay. The other thing that I really want to point out and share with the trustees is that, as Josh shared with his very generous shout out on Wednesday, January 30th, 128 people visited the Park Ridge Public Library during the polar vortex. We have reduced hours 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. And I've been in the process of collecting data, information, and synthesizing to share that with the trustees. I had set up a staff survey, and as of yesterday and the day before, I was still receiving feedback from the staff. So I'd like to give that some more time before I come back. Also, I talked with a colleague who shared with me her guidelines for how winter weather affects library services. So I feel like there's a lot of information out there for us to gather and digest, and so I would ask for some additional time so that we can really do it right.
Sure.
This report. Great.
Was there, I know there was some discussion regarding making the library a warming center, and then looking though realistically at what are the guidelines as to a warming center, and then needless to say, under significant weather, what impact does that have with respect to then, of course, the homeless coming in, which they're the public, there's nothing wrong with that. And I know I thought either you and or Angela were further vetting that with the state or the county or whomever defines warming centers.
We found out a lot of information so far. At the state level, all state buildings, I don't think I can say all state buildings, but the state designates state-owned facilities throughout Illinois as official warming centers. And an official warming center doesn't mean that you provide sheltering or food or any general amenities other than it's a space and the heat's on. The state of Illinois has on their website that the governor requested that the mayor of every town designate a local warming center, which from what I understand, that was the understanding of what we were as a warming center. Also, a warming center is also defined as during their hours of operation. It's not a 24/7 type scenario. So some libraries, as I understand it, have chose to interpret that, well, if we stay open, we're a warming center. But if we close because of a warning or a governor-issued state of emergency, then we're not a warming center. We're only a warming center when we're open. I do understand that warming centers can also be designated at the county level and have similar requirements. To date, I've only delved into Lake County. you know, to get some guidance, but I think basically what it comes down to is, as I mentioned to the reporter who contacted us, we know that the services we offer are of great importance to the people who visit the library, to the community of Park Ridge. We know that, and we know that the people who came in that day came because they needed to use our services, wanted to use our services, and benefited from them. I think the thing for me that was really tough was to say, okay, there was an official state of emergency issued by the governor. He did also mention in his statement it was so that you know, municipalities could get state aid if necessary. So he did qualify the statement with that information. But I felt as though it would be helpful for us to have a sort of if-then type of understanding of what we do in these scenarios, and make sure that we discuss that with our mayor, and make sure that we're
In the
making this
interest of
recommendation.
time, why don't we get this into a report and a recommendation, and then we should then consider it,
Thank you.
okay?
Thank
Rather
you.
than-
I would just add one qualified to that. If there is state aid available, then, you know, it's going to other towns, then let's see if there is something that we could also get too, if that is part of the recommendation.
My understanding of that's if there's damage, devastation, that the state
Oh.
aid would come into play, not
Oh, it's
necessarily
not.
for manning emergency services.
Okay, not
Necessarily.
for keeping a warming center open, there's
Not-
not aid for that, or
not as
county
much.
aid or anything like that, no.
And yes, thank you,
Okay.
Josh, I get excited about this topic,
I know.
so thank you very much. And yes, the staff were tremendous that day.
Mhm.
So those were the highlights that I wanted to share. If you have any additional questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them now.
Just one quick thought on the innovative drive-up stations.
Oh, the
Concierge.
curbside pickup?
Right.
Yes.
I'm wondering if it wouldn't be valuable to move that to spots in the back of the library. Just because I think that a lot gets lost on Prospect.
Well,
And-
it's a favorite Starbucks parking spot.
Exactly. So as we consider the parking lot adjacent to the library could perhaps have one or two spots so designated.
That's a great suggestion, thank you.
Anything else on that, Heidi?
Unless you have any questions for me.
Questions? No? Okay, moving on to committee reports, planning and ops.
Okay, let's see. Planning and ops. We have a motion to approve the purchase of meeting room chairs for sum not to exceed $19,999 and no cents. We had some discussion on this, and I can attest to the ratty nature of the existing chairs firsthand.
So,
I have some thoughts. Is it okay?
Joe,
Oh, Joe.
if you can hold off just a second.
Okay.
Heidi was, I think, getting ready to talk to us about the memo
Okay.
here on page 61.
Sure.
You don't have the luxury of looking at her like we do.
as I draw breath.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I'm not yet ready to make a recommendation, but I definitely feel like it would be of value to hear from the board if the format for the assessment and the criteria are more in line with the board's expectations for this purchase. And then from there, I hope to have the samples and quotes on purchasing other options at quantity prior to the March committee meeting.
So the difference between what you presented last week and this week is that it's cost, quality, and weight is kind of what you looked at now.
Right, based on our discussion, those were the three, and I weighted them equally. And have an example here of the scoring. you can see that there are sections that are not yet filled out because I don't
Sure.
haven't
No, I was
set
just
them yet.
making sure those are the three that you were looking at.
Yes.
Okay.
So does the quality rating, that includes not just, you know, comfort or appearance, it also includes durability? So I'm assuming you pay twice the amount of money, they last twice as long.
Warranty, reviews, you know, user, if they're happy with it and have reported. So yeah, we lumped all of those in together. In terms of like a lifespan,
Yeah.
I don't think I can really speak to that, but all of the products we're considering have a 10-year unlimited warranty.
They all do.
Yes.
That's what I struggle with. You know, I like the fact that they're more easy to stack for the staff and, you know, appearance and comfort, but, you know, if we have to pay twice as much and we're not gonna get any longer period of time out of the chair, I think that's just a lot of variables to roll up into one
It really is.
decision, so I can see why it's been a struggle.
Well, and you can see with the scoring, and I don't wanna forget about Mr. Egan, and his comment, but, as you can see sort of from this rough outline, I think we're probably, running the risk of having a three-way tie.
I noticed that.
So, John has been really helpful in assessing the two chairs that we've received to date, the two of the four. Seeing cleaning solutions, seeing what a scratch looks like on the underside. You know, he's been very, very helpful, and so I would ask him to help if we end up with a situation like that, we're like, well, you know, here we have these, what's the tiebreaker? What makes the difference between these three? And I would get his feedback to be able to share. I agree with you, it's a really tough decision. I think that the difference between the 7-pound chair and the 12-pound chair would be noticeable to the staff, you know, primarily when they're doing the, you know, stacking up on top of the stack and pushing the dolly. So, you know, that might be a consideration, but yeah, it's a tough one. I hope the other two chairs that we get live up to their reviews, and we have 4 viable options to compare.
Thank you, Joe?
Two real quick things. One, what's the current weight of chairs we have?
15 pounds.
Yeah, so it sounds like all these are improvement over that. Secondly, I thought we were gonna make a recommendation tonight, but it sounds like we're not going to, which is fine. But for the, some of the younger members on the board, younger being fewer years on the board, we went through this process a few years ago with the previous director, and had all the chairs come in, we all sat in them, we evaluated them, we came up with a recommendation. I think it's the K1 chair, which the previous library director was her strong first preference. The board decided not to go with that one for a number of reasons, including cost. I'm fine with going through the process again. I just want to give everyone the history on this. They were not purchased because the previous library director opted not to purchase them, even though the board wanted to purchase one of these on the list. I can't remember which one it was, or if it was a different one, but we had been through a very similar process before, and that K1 chair was not the winner, but it could be the winner this time. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Joe. Anything else on chairs?
So move to table
we're-
that, or?
Yeah, can somebody make a motion to table that?
I'll move to table that motion.
I'll second it.
Can I just ask, did we answer your question, Heidi? About what we deem important? Are you satisfied?
I think so. I feel like if you were dissatisfied, you would say, you know, let's have a different criteria for next month. So I feel okay with it. I think that,
I think Shar raises a very good point about the chairs, and I'm very opinionated about the weight of the chair and what a difference that makes in when someone needs to do a 30-minute transformation of that room, pulling out 70 chairs, and oftentimes it's one person doing it, pushing the dolly and doing that. And so I want to make sure that without beating you over the head with it, I successfully convey what that looks like to the staff and why I feel that's worth the investment over the 10-year lifespan. And I fear that I'm not being very successful or helpful with that aspect. So I'm glad to have a little bit more time, maybe to think about it. If you have feedback for me, you know, before the next cow, I'd be happy to hear your thoughts.
Bring in a stack of chairs and make us all lift them.
That's not a bad idea.
That's actually a good idea.
The chair that you want, you hold up, and the last man or woman standing.
It's their pick. That's a good one.
So I'm happy to give that more thought and more preparation for the next cow. So I think it's good that we'll have a little bit more time to better prepare this.
Okay, thank you. So, any more discussion? We have a motion to table it in a second. Any more discussion? No discussion over there?
I have one quick. Is it, if we limited the amount of money we're gonna spend as a total, and trust the library director to make a decision on our behalf. I mean, we're not gonna get these for $10,000, maybe. And it's not gonna be more than $20,000. So my inclination is to say, the library director has been given our guidance, our wisdom. She does not need our butts to make this decision. I think, in my opinion, we shouldn't table this. We should authorize her to go buy some chairs.
I agree
my
with that.
opinion.
I agree with that. I've always thought that, you know, gosh, what I like in a chair shouldn't dictate the entire building, especially if John's the one that has to haul them around and stock them and take them out. And I mean, I remember the sticker shock when Joe described our prior process where we looked at these and I thought, oh, 8,000 versus 18,000. This K1 isn't worth that. No way. I was absolutely against it. But when you put it that way, flipping a room in a half hour from going from one program to battle the books and then another meeting, and if there's a 10-year warranty on these chairs and we pay 18,000 versus 8,000, that's only 1,000 a year, and that could preclude like a back injury or some other on the job. I mean, 1,000 a year for all that convenience and the ability to fulfill our program obligations. I mean, that's when I look at it that way, 10 years. Then I'm not, then I'm really more convinced.
And I think you had also mentioned, I'm sorry, that the warranty on some of these 10-year chairs was a 10-year on the frame only. Well, the frame.
Not these.
Okay, okay.
If it was limited
All right.
like that, we
Yeah.
eliminated it.
Okay, all right, I'm sorry.
No,
Sorry.
no.
No, but I'm supportive
I
of your motion instead of tabling it, maybe just deferring.
You know what, I understand the sentiment, if I can bring maybe a little bit more pragmatism to the issue. Our purchasing policy requires that not only do we have 3 bids, but that we actually vote on what we're gonna spend and who we're gonna spend it with.
Okay.
So I think we'd be violating our purchasing policy if we did that.
Well, making the decision, not confirming what she decides. We would have to vote on it,
Oh,
obviously.
okay, I thought you meant vote.
Okay, well,
No,
I
I'm talking about the
Yeah.
actual decisioning.
The actual
on the chair.
bidding process
Yeah.
is under $20,000, right?
Quotes.
We
Under
need 3
20.
quotes
Right.
under 20 grand, but
And
not
you-
actual bidding.
I see.
Bidding's above 20 grand, where you write the specs and put it out.
Okay.
But I still think we need to vote on an actual amount of money to an actual vendor, true?
Oh,
I
yeah,
agree.
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
But I too appreciate the thought. So I will get, the awesome team, Jody has been on how many chair websites in the last, she's been amazing.
Thank you, Jody.
Yes.
She's our
We will
chairwoman.
have- Yes, we will have that in really good shape for you for the March cow. We'll have the actually 4 quotes, and the assessment of the chairs. We have John's recommendation, and, you know, if any kind of participatory, demonstrative thing would be helpful, you know, just let me know. Josh, I printed a picture for him.
Thank you. I was here this day, and I have a high school friend who was he started a second family with his second wife. He now has a 2-year-old. So I was here with him and his daughter for story time. And then I came, and that was at 9:30. Then there was a second story time that went till 11:15 or so. And then I was here for the library luncheon. And in 26 minutes, they went from, how many people do we have?
Did 75 plus for the luncheon.
Right, yeah. So they went from a setup with carpet on the floor, you know, and the mothers taking their kids out, to tables with a piano, a podium. I mean, all these things had to be, you know, it's a complete restructuring of a multifunction room. And those suckers are in bad shape, and they're very heavy.
Yeah.
And they were amazing, 14 of those 8-foot tables, and they did it all in less than 30 minutes.
The timestamps are there on the, yeah.
How many people did that? Was it just?
2.
It was just 2?
I still think we are still coming back to that same conclusion that we're gonna table this motion.
Apparently.
Right,
Yeah,
any more
it's that
discussion
way.
on this motion? On tabling the motion, okay, can we have a vote?
Do we have to roll call motion for today?
I withdraw
Or would it just
the
be a voice
motion.
vote?
I withdraw the motion.
Oh, okay.
All right, we'll do it next month.
How about all in favor?
It's tabling, right?
There's no action to take.
Do we need a voice vote, or do we?
To table it?
You could probably go either way. If you've already got it on the paper, you can just do a voice vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So that motion is tabled.
Yeah.
Moving on to communications and development.
I don't think we have any additional reports at this point. As we discussed last week, we're starting to kind of look at this community engagement plan, and I know that Heidi and her team, they're almost ready to bring on a new marketing person full-time, so that'll be great. And so once we kind of have all hands on deck, then we'll start to really, their team will really start to put together the plan of action on how we're gonna get this started and run it by the board, and we'll go from there. So more to come.
And I think there's a little bit more coming up in the personnel meeting too, about how this relates to Heidi's goals and stuff.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, building and grounds.
Building and grounds. Okay, you know, if you go to page 65, there is the previous minutes, and do I have a motion to approve Buildings and Grounds Committee of the Whole minutes of February 12th?
I don't think
No,
we
you
need
don't
to
need
do
that.
I don't need
That
that.
is
Not counting.
Okay, we don't need that.
Just move to that vote.
Okay. Okay, there's a motion to accept a quote for the low voltage cabling in the amount of $19,491.41 from Airport Electric Company. And it does include the material as reported by Heidi. It also, they acknowledge that they are paying prevailing wage, and that was confirmed, if I'm correct, Heidi?
Yes, sir.
So is there any discussion as it relates to this particular motion?
Quick question. They're providing only wire, they're not providing anything else? Because it says Airport Electric will provide all wire and labor. So I'm assuming it's only wire that they provide. There's no,
They're terminating them.
maybe piece of conduit or something like that?
No, there's no conduit for low voltage.
I understand that, but I'm wondering if they're like
Termination and.
plates or, you know, whatever. Anyway, I don't think this is a big deal, but I'm just trying to.
And you're right, I would make the assumption that it's a finished look that they're providing.
In the original, letter, they said they specified .6 in the connectors.
Okay. Take your word for it, Judge. You know what,
So
you know what
this is
this
just
talking
to
about.
get us ready for the Wi-Fi and the camera installation. So these guys, they won't be installing them, they won't be, you know, doing any of that end work. They'll be running the cables so that, we can have those put in.
So how long will we have wires sticking out of holes in the wall?
I don't believe they're gonna be sticking out of holes in the wall. I think, you know, a lot of it happens in the ceiling, and it'll be coiled up in the ceiling,
Okay.
ready for when it's tapped into.
When is the
Are
Wi-Fi
they
and
gonna
the security
have to
cameras
pull it out
being,
then?
when is the next step then of the Wi-Fi installation and the cameras?
So for the Wi-Fi hotspots, Angela, do you feel like you could make comment on the E-rate process that we're currently going through, or shall I do that? Okay, okay. CVI, our tech consulting and service providing firm, has been walking us through the process of applying for E-rate discounts for equipment. So the Wi-Fi hotspots, the administrative staff right now is preparing, do they call it an RFP? E-rate?
It's a Form 470 with an RFP attached to the form.
So basically, it's a government subsidized discount for schools, libraries, et cetera, that if we follow the Child Internet Protection Act, SIPA, and have filtered internet, among some other qualifications, we can qualify for, we're hoping, a 50% discount on this equipment. So a for-profit can, as long as they're qualified and they meet all the recommendations, can shop these RFPs and bid on them through this E-rate platform, and then we get the best deal, and then the E-rate subsidy, we get a 50% discount. We get basically the hardware for half.
So is that
This is federal?
reimbursement? Is that a
Federal
reimbursement?
program?
Sorry.
One at a time?
Sorry.
So it is federal, and we're going the route of not doing the reimbursement, but the vendor gets reimbursed.
Okay.
So, because that has a specific time frame, we wouldn't be able to start the project until July. We wouldn't be able to install, but we thought that'd really be worth it to save that
That's a great idea.
kind of money. We're green with this process. We're, you know, double checking every I and T and making sure they're all good. But the application is due by the end of February. And things are looking good, and as long as we do everything right, we should get.
Is there a
excellent
head count as to cameras and Wi-Fi antennas or whatever? Are we talking 25? Are we talking 105?
I did
I don't
not, so we have 36 camera locations that we're looking at.
Okay.
And 25 wireless access locations. I don't have with me, this would be a phased.
We don't have to buy them all at once.
Right, right. So I'm sorry, I don't have the exact numbers with me.
No, I'm
but
just
we're-
trying to get my head around what's the scope of it. And then if in your application, do you have to tell them what your scope is? I would think you would.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry, I just don't remember the number. We were, wonderful Ed has been championing that project,
Okay.
so I can get that information to you via email.